Hello. In this video, we'll be going over IRS Form 8949, Sales and Other Dispositions of Capital Assets. So we're recording this video. The last version of this form we covered, I believe, was from 2023. We have kept the articles up to date, but wanted to update this video because there are a couple of significant changes that the IRS has put into the Form 8949. For a lot of annual tax forms, IRS normally just does a cursory review, maybe makes some minor tweaks, and then changes the year. But for this one, a couple of things of note. So the first off, if you're familiar with IRS Form 8949, there's a lot more boxes on both Part 1 and Part 2. We'll go over those in depth because there are a couple of additional assets that the IRS is now looking to track and report. And then you can also, there's a difference when it comes to the tax treatment of certain farmland sale or exchanges in installment periods. So if you sold or exchanged farmland to a qualified farmer after July 4th of 2025, there are a couple of ways that you can pay that net income tax. You can pay it in 4 equal installments. That's not necessarily covered in depth in this form, but it would go through onto Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 of your Form 1040. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty of this form. So in this case, John Doe is going to complete this. And again, there are certain instances in which you may complete a Form 8949 without doing Schedule D. There may be certain instances where you complete a Schedule D without Form 8949. Generally speaking, though, however, we do cover those in depth in our articles, and we'll put links to all the resources to both the articles and the videos that we've created about not only IRS Form 8949, but other tax forms that are adjacent to it. So Schedule D, some of these 1099s that you see here, we'll put links in the show notes to resources we've created so that you can kind of put it all together, if you will. But real quick, IRS Form 8949, generally speaking, has 2 parts. Part 1 is on the front, short term, so that's page 1, and then Part 2 is on the back, or page 2, long term. Virtually the same type of thing, except for the difference between short term and long term transactions. So the IRS defines any short term transaction as a holding period. So if you buy it on one day and you sell it in the future, the number of days in between that's called the holding period. So if your holding period is 1 year or less, then that is considered a short-term transaction. If it's more than 1 year, meaning 1 year plus 1 day or longer, then it would be considered a long-term transaction. So whenever you enter this information into something like TurboTax, it is important to kind of understand how the mechanics of this form work, because I've answered a lot of tax questions from people about how they've reported capital gains or capital losses based on what actually appears in their 8949. So we'll go through this step by step, kind of walk you through some ways on how you can understand this. So let's take a look at Part 1. First of all, the big change, prior year versions used to have basically Box A for short-term transactions where the basis was reported to the IRS. Box B, short-term transactions reported on 1099-B showing basis not being reported. And then C, short-term transactions not reported to you on any tax form. So again, item A or box A would be a 1099-B brokerage statement was issued to and showing the basis of each of those assets to the IRS. Category B would be any short-term transactions that were reported on a 1099-B, but the basis was not reported to the IRS. And then in the category C, which means none of the transactions were reported to you or the IRS on any tax form at all. So now they've kind of given a qualifier to this, because now we're introducing digital assets. Digital asset transactions, the IRS is still trying to put out guidance on how to report that, but needless to say, in the short term, they've created several new categories. So again, G, H, and I, short-term transactions that were reported on a form called IRS Form 1099-DA, standing for digital assets, showing that the basis was reported to the IRS. And then category H, showing that a short-term transaction reported on 1099-DA, showing that the basis was not reported. And then category I, which was a short-term digital asset transaction that was not reported at all in any tax form. So you can aggregate all of the short-term transactions that were reported on a 1099 where the basis was reported to the IRS and for which no adjustments or codes are required. So these adjustments and codes, they're in the instructions. We'll go over a couple of examples. But basically what you would do is, if you have those, you simply would report those directly onto Schedule D, line 1A. That's where the short-term transactions would go. You can aggregate those without having to report them on IRS Form 8949. And then you'll see something similar in Part 2 for long-term transactions. So again, other than the exact definition of long-term versus short-term, these types of transactions are reported virtually the same. So we'll do a couple of examples. So let's see, description of property. Let's just say XYZ Holding Company, and we purchased this, let's say, on 9/30/2025. We're going to complete this as if we're still working on our 2025 tax return. Let's say that we held it for, so clearly less than the period of time, less than the 1 year holding period. We held this for about 2 months. Let's see that we got $100,000. I guess I should put 1,000 shares, since that's what it says up here. So 1,000 shares of XYZ Holding. The proceeds were $100,000 or $100 per share. Let's just say that the cost was $90,000. So if there are no adjustments, sales proceeds, or the proceeds minus the cost or other basis would be $10,000. Now, if you go through the instructions, you can see that these are net proceeds, meaning that you can adjust this by any commissions that you might have paid to broker the sale. And the cost or other basis, you can make those adjustments as well. Now, adjustments, to not be confused with the adjustments that would go in column F or column G, there's an entire part of the Form 8949 instructions that discusses the adjustments in depth. So we do cover this a little bit more detail in our article, so we won't go into too much detail here. We'll see if we can pull out an example of what an adjustment might look like from the form instructions. Probably the most common adjustment that I can think of is if you have to report a sale of your home that ended up being exempt from capital gains or partially exempt due to the Section 121 tax exclusion. That's probably the most common common adjustment. So this is how you would do that. Put the address of the house. Let's just say we'll pick an old house that I used to own. So this used to be my old address. You can put like a single family home. You can put something to describe it. I'm just writing in. But this is clearly a single family home. If the IRS has questions, they can ask. So let's just give it the same holding period. And let's just say that I sold it for $400,000. I had bought it for $375,000. Now, obviously, well, you know what? If this is a short-term transaction, I wouldn't have any capital gains exclusions. So I'm going to just report the gain right here. Now, when we go back to, and then we'll just say that we need to select a short-term transaction that was now reported on a 1099. So we will get to the capital gains tax exclusion in just a moment, but we can't do that in part one because we're talking about a short-term gain. So we've got a couple of transactions, and again, for if you have transactions that meet the criteria for multiple boxes, for example, if you had a 1099B that showed a bunch of basis and then you had a 1099B that showed 0 basis, you would have to complete a separate form 8949 per box. Now, if you're doing tax software, TurboTax does all this automatically. It'll just spit out as many different 8949 copies as it needs to, and it will have checked the appropriate boxes. Of course, up to 6, right? So, once we completed this, then we're going to simply total everything up. We've got the total of the proceeds, $500,000. It looks like the total of the cost was around $465,000. There's no adjustments here, so the profit is $35,000. That goes on to Schedule D. So depending on which box you completed, that's going to tell you which line on your Schedule D that you put this information in. So, and then there's a note: if you checked box A or box G, but the basis is incorrect, then you can enter the column of the basis as it was reported to the IRS, and then you would enter the appropriate adjustment to correct that basis. And again, we go into detail in our article. So switching gears, let's now talk about this long-term transaction. So that was reported as we're just going to take this sample right here, and now we're going to report it as a long-term transaction. Now, first of all, if it's not on a 1099B and it's not on a 1099DA, then it's going to end up being in box F, even if you get what's called a 1099S. That's a seller statement. So normally with a capital gains tax exclusion, you don't even have to report it to the IRS. However, if you receive a 1099S, then you do need to report it to the IRS, or else you're going to get a letter saying, hey, we received this 1099. We're pretty sure you did too. Why didn't you report it on your tax return? The vast majority of homeowners who meet the capital gains exclusion, they don't even receive a 1099. So for this house that I did sell about 10 years ago, I never received a 1099. I just ended up not having to report it on my tax return. So let's see. I'll actually put some information that's kind of close to the dates and periods that I held this. So let's just say that we held it. We sold it. These are approximate dates. Let's see. So now this would be a $130,000 gain. However, there is a code that I would be able to use that reports the sale or the exchange of a main home at a gain. You can report it in part 2 and exclude either some or all of the gain. And this is how I would do it. So that particular code is called code H, and then I would make the adjustment for this $130,000. And that gives me a gain of 0. So that's how that happens. Now, this particular code can go up to $500,000 for a married couple filing a joint tax return, as long as each spouse independently has owned and has lived in the house for 2 out of the past 5 years. If a married couple has one spouse that married into the family, then as long as the other spouse has owned and lived in the house for 2 out of the past 5 years, then the other spouse can be kind of grandfathered in under that. So you're going to report it as if you weren't taking the exclusion, just like I did, and then you're going to enter the amount that was excluded as the negative number adjustment. I forgot to put the parentheses, so this is all stuff tax software takes care of, and then move on accordingly. So basically the $295 minus the $130 gets you to the $165,000 cost, resulting in 0 gain. And then if that's the only item, then it would be okay. So again, additional instructions for reporting a transaction if the basis is incorrect. And we do cover all of the different codes when you might use them in our form instructions. So that if you're looking for particular details, just know A, your tax software is going to do all of this automatically. B, if you're doing this by hand, you're going to need to create a different 8949 for both either part 1, part 2, but each of these 6 different categories, you're going to need to print off a different sheet, and then you would consolidate all of these so into Schedule D. So if it's box A or G, that information goes into line 1B. If it's box B or H, that information goes into line 2. And then if it's either box C or box I, that information goes into line 3. And again, on Schedule D, that's when the netting out of capital gains and capital losses occurs, and you get one number that ends up getting pulled over into your Schedule 1 and onto your Form 1040. So that's generally how that works, and that's all we have for this video. So if you have any questions, please post them in the comments section. So we will post links in the show notes to all the resources we've created about not only the updated article for 8949, but all the other forms that might be involved. So the 1099s, Schedule D, we'll put links in the show notes to all those resources so that you can access them as you need to. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our YouTube, to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.